more public, and we didn't officially go into a public hearing. So any other people's comments? Would you like to summarize for Commissioner Kiefer what we just added?
Yeah, the language that has been recommended by the Grow and Fortify group in the email that you received this morning, that the definitions at the end, instead of saying beverages produced on site, would be changed to beverages produced by the licensee. That would provide more flexibility, pardon me, to the contract brewers and so forth to be able to produce their products somewhere else if they have excess demand, and it would fall within the licensing, the manufacturing licensing for the state.
Okay. Commissioners, thoughts? How would you like to proceed?
I would go ahead and my personal opinion is voted in because of course I've lived this for about 7 months, so I'm pretty aware of it. But
Would that be a motion?
I motion to approve.
There wasn't any opposition at all.
No, sir.
No. Motion to approve.
Second.
Yeah, well, we're gonna hear, they'll close it and then any other comments from anyone? All right, we're gonna close this public hearing then. Commissioners, what are your thoughts?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
With the added language.
Yeah, it is.
With the added language.
Yeah.
First and a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, commissioners.
Big success for Washington County. Way to go. Gentlemen, please come forward. We're a little early, but thank you for arriving early as well. Please introduce yourself and thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. Jeff Prude, Chief Operating Officer, Washington County Public Schools. With me is David Brandenburg, Executive Director of Finance. Our item for you this morning is the first quarter budget adjustments to the Washington County Board of Education's FY 2020 General Fund budget. As you know, as we tell you every time we come in, that COMAR does require us to reforecast revenues and expenses periodically. That's done on a quarterly basis. And you have the schedule in front of you, I believe, as well, that shows adjustments worth $365,842, and this item was approved both by the Board of Education's Finance Committee and the full Board of Education at its last meeting, which would have been a week ago today. And with that, we can answer any questions you have about the individual adjustments.
Commissioners, comments, questions? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
to approve.
To approve. There's a first. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next up, Susan Small, all your folks here. Please introduce yourself and the topic. Good day.
Good morning, Commissioners. Susan Small, Director of Business Development, and with me today I have Dr. Jim Klauber, President of Hagerstown Community College. Today we're here to ask for support for job profiling for Washington County, Maryland employers through the Work Keys, Work Ready Communities programs. Our recommended motion is to improve the reallocation of Appalachian Regional Commission grant funds, which were previously awarded to Washington County in the amount of $37,500. And we want to reallocate that to Hagerstown Community College's FY20 ARC grant application and improve the use of hotel rental tax at another $37,500 to help meet the 50% match requirement that ARC has. The Washington County Department of Business Development is asking the Board of County Commissioners to approve the use of the unused ARC, Appalachian Regional Commission grant, along with hotel rental, as I said, in a 50% match for a total of $75,000 for the sole purpose of job profiling services by Washington County employers. The use of ARC grant funds would match our contribution from our hotel rental tax funds, dollar to dollar, maximizing the funding available for local businesses. Hagerstown Community College received a preliminary approval to proceed with a formal application from the ARC Commission, from ARC for a grant in the amount of $57,000, which requires a local match of another $57,000 to conduct their workplace-based assessments to meet employer needs. Washington County was previously awarded $75,000 in the ARC grant for website enhancements that, due to changes in the scope of work, was deobligated and held for future projects. The Washington County Department of Business Development is seeking approval to reallocate the grant money in the amount of $37,500 to increase HCC's request from $57,000 to $94,500 and meet the 50% match of $94,500 in the following manner. I know that's very confusing, but it's not. So I have Susan Buchanan here with me from the Office of Grant Management. In addition, she's kind of helped us gather these numbers and work through it a little bit. But it's laid out in pieces here. The ARC, the commission grant funds were awarded in $94,500. The match requires a 50% match from us, so from the county. So we are requesting that match come from HRT in the amount of $37,500. But to go back to maybe answer any questions you may have about the actual project and what we're looking to fund, maybe Dr. Klauber can explain that a little bit.
Sure, I'd be glad to, and if you've heard it all before, then stop me and I'll stop. What we really want to do is work with our area employers to conduct job profiling services specifically for those job positions that they may have that are either difficult to fill because of high turnover, or may be very unique in their nature of the job that makes it difficult to quantify through some sort of training before they go into the job, what work skills an individual is going to have. And our Work Keys and Work Ready Community project, one of the components is for employers to profile typically jobs that are in those two areas so that they know what type of employee they're looking for when they go out to hire. They know what Work Keys score that individual is going to be successful at that job. And I can give you a good example. We did some job profiling for Rust-Oleum. In meeting with the plant manager out there, he says, no one comes to work here that knows how to make spray paint. They don't know that. They have to be taught that when they go to work. But the question is, he wants to be able to make sure that the people he hires have the skills to be able to do that job when they go to work there. And so job profiling was a natural fit for him. And we've been doing that for some other employers, and we got some grant money from the Fletcher Foundation to kind of kickstart this. And we also, the employers have to put a little skin in the game too. And so, they're also going to help pay for those job profiling services, but this would help offset that cost a little bit per job. And employers don't have to do every job. They really just have to do the jobs where they're unique in nature, or they have high turnover and they want to try and stem that turnover. And you do that best by fitting the right person for the right job.
So basically, you're just asking us for $37,500 out of the hotel motel fund. Is that how would you sum that up pretty easy?
Yes, sir, Commissioner. We're going to turn $37,500 into $189,000. How about that?
That was easy enough for me. You could have started off that way. Yeah.
So will this be a one-time cost, or is this going to be something annual?
Right now, we're working together to kickstart the job profiling. So one time is what we're hoping for, that we can get. So we have to put the ball rolling.
Commissioner, I would say I think so. I think once it gets done and started, at a future date, you may want to, as the county may want to look at wrapping that into maybe an economic development package. If you have somebody that comes in, that gives Ms. Small another arrow she can put in her quiver when she's trying to recruit a company to come here. So we'll subsidize the profiling of 10 or 20 jobs or something like that. And, she might come back to you for something like that. But, I would say, no, I think this is going to be it. We had asked for some money from the state, and we got an appropriation for that this past year, but then the governor fenced that money off. And so we're trying to cobble together, any way we can to try and meet that need that we didn't get from the state.
And I did like era in the quiver,
Better than,
tools in a toolbox.
yeah. I caught that.
Well, it's an economic development. Although I'm not in that business, it's all about hunting, so it's got to be arrow in the quiver.
I mean, I'm okay with it.
I think it's a great program, and I think, Dr. Klauber, you brought the concept of the Work Keys Ready program to Washington County. We are the first Work Keys Ready community, or we will be, in the state of Maryland, and it sounds like some other counties in the state have taken notice and are trying to follow suit. So
They have.
thanks for helping us to take the lead on that.
You bet.
First time I met you, you were promoting this program at chamber breakfast.
Yeah, it's going to make a difference for Washington County. I'm convinced of that.
Well, commissioners, there's a recommended motion to approve this reallocation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Boggs, are you ready? We're a little early, but please come forward.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Starting out with the Maryland Ag Land Preservation Program 60/40 match. A little bit of background. The 60/40 match is a mechanism that the Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation uses in order to leverage county funds with state funds in order to provide more easement dollars for our local conservation easements through the Maryland Ag Land Preservation Program. Basically, every year or every cycle, MALP, as we call them, asks if we wish to contribute any money toward the 60/40 match. The way the 60/40 match works is that essentially for every $4 the county puts in, the state will put in 6. So 40, 100, 400, 600, and so on. So they have the 60% portion. We have the 40% portion of the match. This year, we're proposing to put $325,000 of the county's ag transfer tax fund toward our portion of the 60/40 match. Of course, the county ag tax dollars are solely for ag preservation purposes. And this will equate to a 60% of $487,500 that the state would put into the match. This year, for this cycle, this MALP cycle, we're looking at what the state has approximated to be about $800,000 of general allotment funds they give, and basically here's how it's broken down. Every year or every cycle, the foundation will apportion half of their funding to go to the general allotment. That's the $800,000, and then the other half they will use for the 60/40 match. So that all comes down to how much the counties are willing to put forward. So with our $325,000, the state's matching $487,500, and the general allotment portion, we're estimating that we'll get around $1.6 million for easements on Maryland Ag Land Preservation Program properties.
How much was it last year?
Almost the same, although we gave less matching money last year. So we're getting, in fairness, we're making up more by adding more matching money. It looks like their general allotment amount is slightly less this year than they had available last year. Of course, that's probably due to the fact that we used to do, up until recently, we were doing 2-year cycles. So you would get to submit your applications every 2 years. And because there's been an increase of funding statewide for the programs, they have switched that to 1-year cycles so we could put in applications every year. So it's almost like, it's doubling the amount. We just have, more opportunities to apply. Other than that, with this amount, we think we're going to be able to preserve about 4 farms. If any of you recall years past, there were some years where we could only get 1 farm, even on the 2-year cycles. So it's a pretty positive thing that we're starting to get more of this funding available. Other than that, the fiscal impact, there's no general allotment money, although if you'd like to give some from the general fund, we'd be happy to add it to the 325,000. But I know, normally we just work with our transfer taxes, and that's how we come up with the amount. Through the Maryland Ag Land Preservation Program over the years, we've been able to preserve 13,600 acres in Washington County, and with increased funding, we're hoping to, exponentially improve that from year to year. Do we have any questions so far?
Because of lack of funds, how many people were unable to take advantage of this?
Well, it depends year to year. We have a different number of applicants, but generally we have about 20 to 30 applicants per year. So it's a highly competitive program, and we just, with the money we get, we do as much as we can. Last cycle we picked up 4, and like I said, that's probably double what we've been able to pick up in most years, if not quadruple. So we're making strides, but you're talking about thousands of acres that are on the application list. You're not going to pick up everybody in the same cycle.
Yeah, I'm on the board with you.
Yes.
That's the same scoring system we use?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, the priority ranking.
And there's a lot of people that don't quite make it.
Yep. It's, and as we've mentioned at the board meetings, it's all based solely on the property. It's objective. So we are preserving the very best farms we can in Washington County.
Yeah, to give the commissioners an idea, I think, let's just say there's 20 on the list or 25, and we only have money for 3 or 4 or 2. So it's sort of frustrating sitting on that board wanting to help a lot of people, and you sort of can't. That be a good summary of that?
Yeah, and it's more frustrating for some landowners that have been on the list for several cycles, and you see a new applicant come in and they just have a great property, and all of a sudden they're on top of the list, and we base this solely on the quality of the farm, not on who's farming it, not on the operation. It's how good is the piece of land. And you have to do it that way. It's got to be objective. And so there are, it does get a little frustrating when you see people that, have been hanging out there for a while, but, we do all we can with the money we get.
Okay. Commissioners, are there any other comments?
Motion to approve.
Second.
First and second, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Boggs, looks like you're up next for another one. Please introduce.
Yeah, the next item, we have a CREP easement. It's Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program easement for the KB Farm Properties LLC property. It's there in Smithsburg, just outside of Smithsburg. And the main gist of this program, it is a permanent easement program. It's funded by DNR using mostly project open space funds, and they take these properties as we recommend them. So there's no ranking process or anything like that. They just have the money and they say, hey, if you get a CREP easement, send it to us and we'll give you a thumbs up. And so we work on these as a project by project basis. Also, some more background on the CREP program. It piggybacks essentially off of the USDA Farm Service Agency's CREP contract program. So applicants have to already have a CREP contract in place on the property. The CREP contracts are essentially grassed or wooded buffers that are put around streams in order to stave the runoff from an agricultural operation. So that they get the Farm Service Agency contract, and then we piggyback off that. We have 2 different easement land uses on the property. Part of it is CREP contract. It's basically intended to keep the buffer as the buffer in perpetuity, and then we have the matching portion, which you can do up to 10 times the amount of the buffer. And it essentially restricts tilling, but it allows for uses such as pasture and hayland and woodland and things like that. So it's a little less strict than the contract area. But at any rate, landowners can involuntarily apply for the program, as KB Farm Properties LLC has. Their easement value comes to $57,700.80. It's over 20 acres. The property is going to protect about 2.7 acres of woodland and stream buffers and 17.28 acres of pasture and hayland. And it'll buffer about 1,900 feet of Grove Creek there just outside of Smithsburg. Its property's located in a priority preservation area, so that makes it ideal for preservation. The funds are 100% state dollars, and there's no impact on our general fund or any other county funds. We also receive a 3% of the easement value for administrative costs and 1.5% for compliance costs. That comes off the top of the easement value from the state, and it's all incidental costs are reimbursed by the state as well. Of course, if Washington County rejects the easement, then of course the money will go to another county or jurisdiction in Maryland. Any questions?
Who's KB Farms?
It's an LLC owned by the Winders family. It's a Kirk Winders is the managing member. So, but.
Motion to approve.
Have a first, is there a second? First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, motion to approve, all say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are early. Battery storage, folks, are you?
That would be me.
Thank you for being here early.
No problem. This is the last page of my presentation. There was an error in one column, so I'll give you the
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now you got numbers, Court. There they are, buddy. Are you happy now?
Please introduce yourself and you may begin.
My name is Stephen Wiley, and I'm here on behalf of Inalith, the company that's interested in developing some additional battery projects here in the Hagerstown area. So I was here a couple of months ago. I went through a larger presentation. Today I'm going to go through a shorter presentation, essentially to address some of the questions that you posed in the last time I was here. Here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
One more page. Well, I would like to.
Here
Comes the cavalry.
There we go. Okay, yeah. So just to remind you why I'm here, Inalith has already developed an existing project here in Hagerstown. It's called the Snook Project. We are interested in building 2 more projects in 2020. The aggregate cost of those 2 projects plus the existing project would be $10 million. We also are going to be providing around $350,000 per year in electricity revenue to HLD, which from our perspective mitigates the cost of electric service for their other customers. To remind you, we did have this first project in front of you in 2016, in which it received an approval for the pilot agreement. And then finally, these projects will inject a significant amount of capital locally, and we will hire local workers with little impact on county resources. The request in this particular case is for you to approve pilot agreements for not only the existing project, but for the 2 new projects that we are proposing. So last time there was some discussion. I know you've had several solar projects that have been presented to you in the past, have also sought similar treatment. And I just wanted to compare a battery project to a solar project, because they are quite different in their characteristics. So the energy storage project that we have here in Hagerstown uses very little existing acreage. The footprint is very small. They're both situated next to existing substations. They don't have any other commercial value than to have something like this exist. And so there's no other alternative commercial value for it. A PV solar tends to use a lot more land the equipment cost for a battery project is much higher compared to a solar project. There are many more applications for a storage project that it can provide to the transmission grid as opposed to a solar project. Our technology is quite cutting edge, whereas solar technology has been around for quite some time, and its technology curve is much more mature than ours is. We are in the early stages of maturation. Like all technologies, we need time to mature. And a very important thing to understand is that we today don't receive any kind of federal subsidy, whereas solar projects have a great deal of federal subsidy to it. And then last but not least that I want to mention is that in this case, because of the high personal property tax burden that we could potentially face here, it would jeopardize our ability to move forward with these two new projects. There was also, this was to address one of the questions that came up in our previous discussion. So I want to actually go through a little bit of math here about how we actually came up with our proposal. So the original equipment cost of the two new projects will be around $8.5 million. Of course, you know what the county personal property tax is. You also know the standard depreciation rate of 10%. There's this category F, which is part of the Maryland tax code. Category F is a category, our battery project doesn't fit neatly in any of the existing categories in the Maryland tax code. It doesn't define either power projects or battery projects. However, this category F focuses on equipment that is the primary source of revenue generation. So of all of the categories that we took a look at, that seemed to be the one that fit the most. Then I want to go to this last page. This was a request by one of the commissioners if we would essentially compare what our tax burden would be if there was no pilot granted to us for the two new projects. So that's what the second column represents, starting with $181,000. The two green categories are that's where the error in the calculation came in before. So if you please take a look at the chart that I just gave you, the schedule. We're simply taking the depreciation rate that we had on the previous page of 50% and applying it to the original cost. And so that generates a payment stream that's represented in the fourth column, the second column in green, and that total would be $553,000 if we paid based on a 50% depreciation rate. What we are proposing today is that we would pay essentially 5 equal payments for the two new projects of $50,000 a year, and then through years 6 through 10, we would increase it to $60,000. In addition, we would continue to make the payments that we would make at Snook that was based on the previously agreed pilot agreement of $6,700. And so if you take column 1 plus column 2, we would essentially pay about $600,000 over the course of the 10 years. So that's the proposal that we are submitting for your consideration today.
So what, okay, so you're going to be paying $600,000 over 10 years.
Correct.
If everything moves forward, no pilot, what would the county collect?
The $997,000 column.
Okay. So you need about $400,000. Okay.
So I think the question I had the last time you presented, I'm not sure if staff was able to assemble those numbers. If the project had not been sold, because I believe the the battery storage facility.
Right.
Okay. Was sold, and your firm bought it.
Correct.
If that original pilot had been left to mature, if that's the right terminology, how much would we be collecting in taxes under the original pilot agreement?
If they would have done the projects at that time?
Yeah.
I calculated about $250,000 over the course of the 7 years that they would be paying that pilot.
That's actually what the 6,700 is supposed to represent. That's only for one.
The way I calculated.
Oh, I see, for the 3 projects.
Yeah, that's for all 3 projects.
I see, okay.
Because it's about 25%, because how that original calculation was done is they take the total over the course of 10 years, the total payment that would have been made for corporate personal property, and they discount it 75%, and then they divide that amount by 7 years, and that's how it was calculated, which is about 25% of that value. So what's being presented today is almost double that, if not double that.
Real quick question, on year 9 or year 11, depending if you look at the SNOOK, what are you going to be paying for year 9 under the current one, and what will be being paid on year 11 under the proposed?
So for year 11, we are assuming these are 10-year projects. Now, obviously, if these projects last longer, then we continue to make more payments. But right now, the basic assumption is it's a 10-year project. So that's why I didn't go beyond 10 years.
So you're thinking at year 11, you're done? You're gonna
If that's the case, I mean, it's an emerging technology, so it's hard for me to speculate that it will. But if everything goes, if the project is still commercially feasible, then we'll continue to operate.
And then at that point, you'd be paying the
We continue to make those.
normal tax rate.
That's right.
You'd mentioned 600,000. Your column says 550,000.
550 plus the 46.9, approximately 600,000 between the two columns.
What was the 46.9 again?
That's the SNOOK project. That's the existing operating project.
Is that the number that was corrected on the sheet you handed out to us?
It's actually the green columns, the green and that one as well. It was originally 6,500, I think I had in there.
From 60,
900.
46 to 48 is the SNOOK changed.
46, correct.
But just so I can clarify, Sarah, if you could answer for me.
I'll try.
Under the original pilot that was approved in 2016, it looks like, the county would only be collecting $250,000.
That amount is for,
Or is that the discounted amount?
that amount is the discounted rent amount. So if the pilot was approved, which it was before, and the projects would have been completed, the 250,000 is over and above the 48,300. So that's in addition for these two other projects, because they did complete the SNOOK project. So that's the 48,300 that you see on your sheet.
Did the prior firm, how much did the prior firm benefit in pilot payments?
Those pilot payments, none have come on yet. So that 6,900 that you see on your sheet for the SNOOK won't occur until 2021?
Correct.
Did your firm, you say the project cannot go forward without this pilot project. Were you under the impression that this pilot, the original pilot, would transfer when you purchased?
No, we bought the assets, so we knew the contracts didn't come with it. Obviously, we took it as a
That's a
guide,
big risk.
as a potential guide. That for the SNOOK project, we thought we would get the same treatment, or that's what we were requesting for the two new projects. But obviously, we are promoting something different based on the comments from the last session.
So the first pilot was a terrible deal compared to this pilot. Would you agree with that?
This new request,
I mean, it was
this new request is more beneficial for the county.
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So we're a whole lot further ahead with the second proposal than we were with the first proposal.
Basically doubles the amount that the county will receive.
Right.
So-
And we voted on the first one, right?
First one, yes, there was a vote that was passed,
When was that voted on? What year?
2016.
2016.
Yeah, you voted for it, Terry.
I don't know if I did
You've
or
been
not.
here for 20 years, you vote on everything.
That's all I care about. It's a whole lot better than the first one, right? So why wouldn't we?
Well, how many employees are you going to have there?
So in total, when the facility's operating, we'll have about 5 employees, if you include the warehouse that we have here as well.
I think I'm going to be supporting this pilot, but there's a reason why. I originally voted for the pilot in 2016 to support the company, and there has been a change that appears to be more beneficial to the county. My opinions of pilots have changed over time, though, and if this was brand new coming in, I would not be supporting it. Partly because,
That's a good reason?
that's a good, well, that's my reason, put it that way, that's my reason. Again, I do think there's been a burden placed on our citizens in the form of new taxes that discounting taxes. This is a project that you took over knowing that there was no guarantee of a pilot, but it was an original pilot that I had supported. I do support this change, so I would be voting in favor today.
A motion?
Oh, well,
Go ahead.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
motion, support. I motion to accept it. Yeah.
am I allowed to ask a question?
We can get you,
I thought you were motioning.
get you in discussion.
Take your arrows.
So, not for your project, what could occur on that property?
If you look, at these two new sites, there's really nothing that can happen on those projects. They're right next to substations and really doesn't have any other commercial applications.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion?
Go ahead, motion.
And you're in a hurry.
Call for a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve. I think it's a benefit to the county taxpayer. Like I said, the property here's not going to make much in taxes, and we're getting some tax revenue. So I'll make the motion to approve the $50,000 payment in lieu of taxes for 5 years, then $60,000, then additional 5 after that. Referring back to 11th year if you're still in business, going the normal tax rate. But I also, with any pilot, I do want a decommissioning bond.
I'll second that for a simple reason. It's a whole lot better deal for the county than what the first one was.
You have first and second. Is there any further discussion?
Well, I'm not 30, so I'll be voting in support. Again, the best deal for the county taxpayers, the full amount, but this is a better deal than what we had before, and I was part of the first vote.
Good comments. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 I vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I believe we already did urban improvement, Washington County Public Service. Scott Hobbs, I believe that you? Public Service Academy, excuse me. Good morning.
Morning, Scott Hobbs, Director of Engineering.
Susan Buchanan, Director, Office of Grant Management.
We're here to request the board approve the submission of the FY20 Maryland Capital Bond Bill application for the Washington County Public Service Academy and accept awarded funds and approve execution of grant documents upon receipt from the Maryland Department of General Services. In 2019, Governor Hoger authorized a capital bond bill enacted by General Assembly to provide $500,000 for the Washington County Public Service Academy. The county has received the application packet for the capital bond bill grant. Once the application is submitted, the state will provide a grant agreement for the county to review and execute. So I've been working with Susan and Public Safety to provide grant information for this project. So share with Susan if you want to.
This would work at similar fashion to the capital bond bill that we have for the UIP. Once we submit this application, a grant agreement will be received, and it's $500,000, and there is no matching funds, although we have a total budget here of 11.5, so we would have plenty if that was a requirement.
Any questions? Motion to approve. I have a motion. Is there a second? First and a second. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, construction bid, Professional Boulevard. Welcome back, Scott.
Welcome back. Scott Hobbs, Director of Engineering. I'm here to recommend the board award the Professional Boulevard Bridge contract to the lowest responsible bidder, Kinsley Construction of Hagerstown, Maryland, in the amount of $8,963,695, and execute a memorandum of agreement for infrastructure responsibilities relating to the proposed annexation. The project was advertised in the Herald Mail, on email and Marketplace, and 8 bids were received on Wednesday, October 30th. The bids have been evaluated and the low bid is in order. The engineer's estimate for this work was $9.2 million. Professional Boulevard Bridge, Phase 1 project involves construction of a 4-lane bridge over Antietam Creek and grading for Phase 2. Bridge will provide a connection between Washington County and City of Hagerstown near Eastern Boulevard. Project benefits include reducing congestion and emergency response times, improving economic development opportunities, and enhancing the transportation network. Project is a 550 consecutive calendar day contract with an anticipated notice proceed in January 2020 and completion date in the summer of 2021. Bid documents include liquidated damages in the amount of $500 per calendar day for work beyond the completion date. Attached is the MOA regarding the infrastructure responsibilities and the proposed annexation, including future bridge and road construction maintenance. This is a budgeted capital improvement plan project, and there's funds available for Professional Boulevard Bridge RDI 055 and Professional Boulevard Bridge RDI 056 accounts. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions? Recommended motion to approve the award.
Motion to approve.
First, is there a second?
I'll second.
And also to authorize execution of the memorandum agreement with the city.
Okay, to include that, is that okay?
Yes.
All right, have first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Opposed?
No. Oops, excuse me, opposed, no.
No.
Thank you, 3-2. Almost forgot that. Thank you for the reminder.
Nice.
All right, next up, construction bid award, Back Road.
Morning again, Scott Hobbs, Washington County, Division of Engineering, Director of Engineering.
Sorry.
I'm here to recommend the board award the back road contract to the lowest responsible bidder, Lance Construction, doing business as building systems of Hagerstown, Maryland, in the amount of $1,913,175 for the base bid plus add alternate 1 and add alternate 2. Project was advertised in the Herald Mail, on the county's website, Emerald Marketplace, and 1 bid was received and opened in May. Since that time, FEMA has been reviewing eligible costs on the project. The bids have been evaluated and the low bid is in order. The engineer's estimate for the work is $1,750,000. As you're aware, South County experienced significant flooding and damage to numerous roads and structures in May of 2018. The road was severely damaged and has been closed since flooding. The project involves the reconstruction of the road, shoulders, culvert, and a stream restoration project. This is a design-build contract with a 300 consecutive calendar day contract. The anticipated notice proceed would be November 2019 with a scheduled completion date in the summer of 2020. There is available budgeted funding in the Back Road Culvert Project, Stormwater Retrofits Project in the CIP, and reimbursable costs from FEMA, currently estimated at $368,000. The Hoffmaster and Harpers Ferry project is covering local costs for South County flooding projects along with funds received for direct administrative costs. Final costs and reimbursements for flooding event will be determined upon completion of all the projects. And this is the most cost-effective and practical alternative to reopen the road. So if there's any questions.
May I add a comment? Or
Sure.
Everybody was worried that Back Road was being delayed. Could some of that be attributed to like FEMA and us negotiating the
Yes.
reimbursement?
Yeah, they
So-
originally had
Yeah, so it wasn't all
$200,000.
engineering, wasn't so much that we were procrastinating, that we were in negotiations for the reimbursement amount.
Yes, they originally had a $200,000 estimate on the repairs. Since it wasn't a total loss, the culvert remained in place, which was good news for the structure's integrity. However, the remainder of the road and shoulders were washed away. So with that, we went back and received a bid, and we had our estimate, which was what I just shared with you. And we've been negotiating more FEMA eligible costs, and currently they're at $368,000. So we're working to receive as much as we can, and we thought it was beneficial to continue to work with them and coordinate efforts to try to receive as much FEMA funding as we could.
Thank you for those efforts. Commissioners, any questions? If not, a motion to move the award.
I make a Motion.
First, is there a second?
Second.
First and a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There, we're a little early, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself and the matter. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Still morning for 2 minutes. Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer.
Rachel Brown, Director of Human Resources.
We're here today for a second conversation on the minimum wage analysis. We first brought this to you on October 15th. I say we loosely. Rachel wasn't here at that time, but she's joining me now. So we did previously talk about how the minimum wage will change through the Maryland legislation through 2025. We discussed several options for consideration, which are included in the ARF. The options that received the most attention for discussion were options 3 and 4. Option 3 being to move employees to the closest step on the scale who fall below the minimum wage. And then option 4 was to provide annual COLAs of 2% to increase the entire scale over that time period, plus phase out certain grades that are currently on the scale that would not meet the minimum. It was requested that we bring back a different option, or at least look at it. And so you will see that as a new option on your ARF, which is option 5, which would be to increase all employee wages by the same amount of the minimum wage increase. So for instance, if the minimum wage is $10.10 and it's moving to $11 an hour, the difference is 90 cents. What would it cost the county to give all employees 90 cents per hour more? That is the chart that you see on the ARF, and that was a very costly option of around $10 million. So that would also be an option that staff would not recommend for other purposes as well, because if we did that, we would no longer have the same step scale that we have today. And so currently we have a step scale that has 8% between grades and 2.5% between steps. If we chose an option like that, we would no longer maintain those variables between grades and steps. So, but that is something we at least wanted to bring back to you, and you can see in the chart how that was calculated. The other request was for an option between option 3 and 4. So the most logical thing that we thought of to bring back would be to provide an annual COLA of 1% to increase the entire scale, which is different from the previous option of 2%. The estimated cost for that is effectively half of what the 2% would have cost, so about $4.5 million. I find it important to mention that while that request does represent a middle-of-the-road approach between option 3 and 4, I do have concern over it being associated with the minimum wage legislation. In the past, we have had COLAs in some years and steps in other years. And because of that, we found ourselves in a situation where we had to give COLAs to keep our scale up to par with our peers. And in those years, employees didn't receive steps. And alternatively, when we gave steps, we didn't do any COLAs. And so the optimal approach, in my opinion, is to try to balance those modestly. So, you know, is that a 2.5% step and a 1% COLA annually? I bring that to you today just for discussion because I know this shows a middle-of-the-road approach, but I'm not sure it should be associated necessarily with the minimum wage legislation because I think personally it's just good practice. But I will go ahead and turn it over. We have a couple other topics to discuss, and then we can come back and discuss any of this more.
We were also asked to report out what private sector and other counties are doing with the minimum wage discussion. From a private sector concern, there could be a lot of different ways that local businesses could react to this legislation, which include raising prices to consumers, reducing employee benefits, reducing working hours, laying off employees, increasing the use of technology, relocating businesses to other locations that have a lower minimum wage, a reduction in owner salary, or delaying and canceling expansion plans or closing the business altogether. Through our research, we've also reached out to other similarly situated counties, and we've noticed that many of them have not discussed an approach moving forward. However, they've stated that they anticipate cost of living adjustments on their entire scale or the use of a separate part-time scale to meet the requirement. Many of them have yet to discuss this with their county executives or commissioners for funding mechanisms for those cost of living adjustments.